Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Dov Baron joining us. Dov, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor, and I'm looking forward to serving you and the audience.
Well, terrific. I'm very excited to have you on, as I've always enjoyed our conversations. But to start with, before we really dive in, just take a moment, Dov, and explain to everyone that isn't familiar with your work what it is that you do.
I'm a plumber. I unblock drains. Mostly.
In some ways you do. This is true.
It's exactly what I do. Yeah. I speak internationally. I was blessed to be named on the top leadership speakers in the world to hire twice by Inc. magazine in a row. So I speak internationally. I train companies and organizations and build their corporate cultures. And I, of course, work one-on-one with high-level individuals who want to get to where they want to get to, but they don't know what's in the way. And very often, those are people who are very powerful, very successful. They're already doing great. They're the kinds of people that others look at and go, wow, I want to be you when I grow up. Very often, the quote-unquote smartest person in the room. They're wonderful, successful people, but they're going, oh, I know there's something else, and they don't know how to get to it. And, of course, they don't, because it's a blind spot. And by its very nature, a blind spot cannot be seen by that person. My skill is to be able to see those things, show people how to get through those blocks, and move them through very fast. That's why I work with high-powers people.
So you mentioned a few accomplishments there, which are very well, I think, recognized by people being named on the Inc. list and so forth. But I know that you've also worked with the United Nations, the World Management Forum, the U.S. Air Force. To give the listeners just a better sense of the types of organizations or businesses that you work with, what other names have you supported and served?
Some of the companies that I work with don't actually let me use their names. So because the work is actually very deep and very personal.
Sure.
But as you mentioned, the U.S. Air Force, the UN, the State Department, generically, I can mention any of those things, the World Leadership Conference, that was actually out of Iran. But like health tech companies, we just came back from working with Helios, who is a $300 million health tech company out in Philadelphia. So they tend to be certainly what we consider in the U.S. middle to top-end client companies, 100 million plus, who understand the value of having a purpose-driven organization. And this is no longer hyperbole or a trend or a cool thing. Now we understand, because of millennials want meaningful work. And meaningful work means that I want to work for a company as a millennial. If I'm top talent, I want to work with a company who are purpose-driven. And that determines, first of all, loyalty. So that cuts down your costs enormously in retraining and rehiring. By working with a company that is purpose-driven, I tend to stay loyal to them, which means I'm innovative. I show up more and more engaged. We all know that the workforce is more than 70% disengaged. I mean, just think for that for a minute. That means less than a third of your people, let's say, I'm just making up a silly number. Let's say you're paying $100,000 to your team. That means you're only getting $30,000 worth of value at the top end. Everybody else is simply coasting, and some of the people are actually working against you. So if you don't get your people super loyal to you, your business is going down so fast. And this is one of the things that old companies don't get. Well, we've been doing this for 40 years and we've been very successful, and you haven't got $1 billion company. I go, you're right. But you know what? There's a lot of $1 billion companies that disappeared in 2010. After 2008 to 9, gone.
Yeah, for sure. And even for consultants or small consulting firm owners that are listening to this saying, well, yeah, Dov, I don't have many staff or just a few people. What I'm reminded of in terms of what you're sharing right now is it's kind of like back to the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20.
Absolutely.
And it's not always 80-20, right? It might be 70-30 as the example you shared, but in most activities, or whether it's your marketing or how you interact or the actions that you take, most of your positive results come from a few of your actions. And so honing in on that and really being able to put more into what's working to make it even better really just helps with exponential growth. And clearly that's what you're helping people to do.
Yeah, you made a great point there. And I think it's really important for those of us in this industry consulting to get is people who consult fall into two categories. I used to do X, and now I'm a consultant doing X for others or showing others how to do X. Mm-hmm. Or I used to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and now I'm a consultant doing A, B, C, E, F, and G and showing others how to do that. And by the way, I'm also not bad at X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And the challenge for a consultant is because we tend to be small businesses, meaning that we don't have a massive staff with us, mostly. And when that happens, we tend to be grabbing at opportunities, and it's very challenging to learn to say no. Like my biggest challenge, and I know my biggest lesson, is when to say no. I've written pieces about it on LinkedIn called The Integrity of No. It's a difficult thing for consultants to get. But for you to be outstanding, you need to learn to be able to say no to what's not right for you as an individual, not just for your brand, but for you to be in integrity with whatever your purpose is. And you need to know your purpose in order to be able to say you know.
Right. And that might be the type of projects that are presented, the fees that those projects are coming at you. It might be the type of client, a lot of different ways, right? Or opportunities that are presented to us. Saying no to the wrong ones then leaves us available to say yes to the right ones. But if you fill your calendar with too many things that actually are of low value or don't really resonate with you, then you get dragged down by those. You start to hit capacity with the wrong things. And then when something good comes around that really is in your sweet spot, it's much harder for you to be able to say yes to it.
You know this better than most people. You teach people how to do this, and this is why you're a master at what you do. And that's the whole point here. You see, one of the things I was just discussing this with a leader I work with just this week. One of the things I said is, how do you know an opportunity? And that's a big question for people. And people go, well, I put money in the bank or I'll build my rep or whatever it is. And those are fair estimates of what opportunity is. But the thing to understand is not all opportunity is equal. And I'm just going to give you my way of classifying it, and I hope it will help people. And that is this. Opportunity falls into this. If it is aligned with my purpose, if it is aligned with the culture I am building, and if it is aligned with the resources that I have, those resources are not just money, but also time and energy. So I had a guy work for me in marketing years ago, and he was driving me nuts, to be honest with you. And I said to him, that's it, I've had enough. And he goes, what? And I said, you need to come to me with a budget. And he goes, well, okay, I'll show that, because he wasn't showing up with budgets. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, but I don't just want a money budget. I want 3 budgets. And he goes, okay, what are the 3 budgets? Money, time, and Dov time. Money, how much will it cost? And how much will we bring in? Time, how long will it take? What is your estimate on how long this will take? And thirdly, how much Dov time will it need? How much of my personal time and energy and attention will it need? And as consultants, we don't generally do that. We're just looking to bill out something and get it done and get in and get another gig. That's not actually how you build your opportunities. So your opportunities fall into purpose, culture, and resources. And from there, you look at, well, is this an opportunity based on that and the budget that I just gave you?
Yeah, I think that is really, really powerful. I was actually just having a conversation with a client a couple of hours ago who is very passionate in kind of the social sector and working with businesses that are doing good. And he asked me, he said, Michael, do you think this is going to get in the way of me growing my business? And I said, well, you can't change it. That's who you are. That's what you believe in. So don't think about how that might get in your way. Instead, use that as one of your criteria for unqualifying people, disqualifying people from your marketing so that you can get crystal clear around who really is your ideal client and focus on those types of organizations that you're going to feel good about, that's going to resonate better with you. And because you also feel that way, they're going to resonate better with you in your conversations because you'll be speaking to the right kinds of people. And so I think for him, he felt a bit of a sigh of relief knowing that, hey, it's not actually a bad thing if I feel this way. I can now use this as one additional criteria to get clear and to move closer to who my actual ideal clients should be. And I think your whole thing that you just mentioned there, Dov, and said so well around kind of client selection and becoming very clear on who we want to work with and what we want to offer them and does it align with our purpose and these other resources and so forth. These are really important principles and ideas for people to use in their business.
Absolutely.
So let's go back a little bit because you've been doing this now for a while. When you first started
That's a very kind way of you saying you're an old guy.
Well, really what that means is that this is not your first time around the block.
No.
Right? And that's why you're here, because I want everyone to be able to tap into your wisdom, to your experience, right? So we can learn the lessons, the good, the bad from you, because you've been there and done that a couple of times or more. But back to where you got started. I mean, when you really began speaking and writing and consulting, do you remember how you actually got your first client?
I remember I got my first speaking gig. My first client was, I guess the answer to that is simply that my first client I didn't know was my first client. Meaning,
where did they come from?
Give it that way.
Did they come from speaking or something else that you did, or what happened there?
No, it came from a conversation, very interestingly. I was involved in, like, I've been doing this, as you said, a long time. Been doing this for 34 years. Before this, I've always been an entrepreneur since I was a kid, and I owned businesses in the UK, in Canada, and in Australia. In my business in Australia, I had somebody who was a client, a customer of my business, and we would have these great conversations. And he's the one who actually gave me my first speaking gig. But actually, now I think about it, it was also the person who gave me my first consulting gig. And I certainly wasn't consulting in the same way that I am today, but he was the first one. And it really just came out of this natural evolution of a conversation. And what I mean by that is he would come in and we would have these really great in-depth philosophical, psychological, even metaphysical conversations. And that's how he introduced me to speaking. But one of the things he said is, he said, after I had spoken, he said to me, I want you to come and just talk to this small group and have them break through what I call breaching the bias. So actually helping people to see their own bias. You see, the things we believe, we don't call them beliefs. We call them the truth. And that was actually what I had a conversation with him about the day before. He and I had this great conversation about how do you define the truth? And the answer is you don't. It is the truth for you. We see this today in polarized politics. The facts don't actually matter. The truth is whatever the person chooses to believe. And so what I was working with these leaders around was, how do you breach the bias? And it had come out of the fact, and I think I may have talked to you about my first speaking gig, because I think it'll give this context. Is it okay for me to go into that?
Definitely.
Okay, so what had happened was this guy I was telling you about, Steve, owned a national menswear company. We were in a great conversation one day, and he said, I want you to come speak to my leaders. And I said, okay. I'm like, all right, what do you mean? He goes, speak to them. I mean, I want you to come and do a presentation. I'm like, whoa, I'm not a speaker. And he goes, how long do you want me to speak for? He says, an hour. I'm like, forget it. Now, of course, it's a warm-up, but back then it was terrifying as an idea. And I agreed to do 30 minutes, but he had one simple proviso, and it was this. He said, you come dressed as you are. Now, this is 1984. I'm in my early 20s, and I've been a bodybuilder for about 5 years at that point. When you're in your early 20s and you've been bodybuilding for 5 years, it's really important that everybody knows you're a bodybuilder. Meaning I wore shirts that were too tight. I showed off my physique because I was in my 20s. And my hair was super long. It was past my chest. It was that Louis XIII look, the Howard Stern from the 80s look.
Yeah.
I had big earrings that you could hang parrots off. My hair was out. It was wild. I had a tight T-shirt on, ripped jeans. And he said, my only proviso is that you come dressed as you are. I'm like, but you know I have suits, because he owned a national menswear company. He made my suits. That's how I had originally met him. And he said, I don't want you to wear a suit. I want you to wear what you're wearing. So I was okay. And he goes, just get to the door and wait. So I get to the door on that particular day. I put my head in the door as instructed by him, look down this long boardroom table. And of course, all the guys are in front of me and they look like Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. They're buttoned up tight. It's the 80s. And they're all giving me this nod, which is, the English term is the bugger off nod, which is they're putting their head to the side saying, bugger off, you're in the wrong room. But they're not saying anything because they're listening to Steve. And eventually Steve introduces me and I go in and I stand in front of them. And in the early 80s, there was a lot of issues around Aboriginal people of Australia and racism. And I said, put your hand up if you're a racist. And of course, you can imagine how many put their hand up. Absolutely zero. And I said, okay, put your hand up if you would judge somebody by the way they look, the color of their skin, or their appearance in any way. And of course, nobody put their hand up. And I just said, you're a bunch of freaking liars. Every one of you judged me by the way that I look. Every one of you decided who I was the money I had and the intelligence that I had by the way that I looked. And every one of you is wrong, because that's how I know Steve. You make my suits. I don't just dress like this. I wear suits. And at that point, I thought I'd done myself in. I looked over at Steve and he had this big grin on his face. And it was that gig that got me the consulting gig, because I demonstrated that I could show people how to see their own bias. Breaching that bias is what changes absolutely everything, because the worldview opens up to you. And the initial question to it is this: stand outside of a door, look through the keyhole. How much can you see? You will have a perception of the room. Now open the door, but don't pass through the opening. How much can you see? You can see a heck of a lot more than you ever could. Step into the room, you can see even more. But what you don't know is beyond that room is another door that opens up into a massive vista. That's what I do. And so that was what my first consulting gig was showing people where their bias was, how it was limiting them, testing their truths so they could pass through those and then open up to more opportunity in every area of their life.
And Dov, right now, I mean, what percentage of your business would you say comes from your speaking?
About 30%.
Okay. And the rest would be what? Was it from consulting, or how would you break down your current business operations?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
There's several categories. Obviously, as you said, speaking. Mm-hmm. There's corporate consulting, which is working with corporate teams, working with the executive teams of companies and training them around purpose. And then there's individual consulting, personal strategist for high-level leaders in finding and operating out of their purpose. And then aside from that, there is my courses and product line. So I have my own courses. Right. I have my own books, I think like 12 books or something, and courses and those kinds of things. So it breaks up into all those categories.
And is your main lead generator right now, is it speaking? Is it your podcast? What's working best for you to generate or kind of bring in new business opportunities?
I would say without a doubt, the number one is always word of mouth from my clients. My clients will go away and tell their friends, even though a lot of the work that I do is quite private. A lot of those people don't make videos for me. Some of them do, but many of them don't. They will simply go away and talk to their friends and say, listen, you're a high achiever. You're at this top level. And I know it's hard for you to say that you need help. This is the guy to talk to. So it comes from those people. That's the highest level of where my consulting business comes from. The next after that would definitely be from speaking. And after that, it is through social media. And when I say social media, not Facebook as such, but the fact that I write for 15 outlets. And then after that, it's my podcast, which, as you know, I've had for 10 years and is the number one podcast in the world for Fortune 500 listeners. It's still the lowest on the totem pole for referrals, but it's very good for leverage.
Interesting. I think one thing that people would be very interested in learning more about, Dov, is how you went from that first kind of speaking gig on Australia to getting onto world stages and to be really known as an expert in speaking and delivering messages to large audiences. If you could just boil down a little bit of your journey around like the steps that you took to get onto bigger stages. What would they be? If someone maybe has done a couple of Toastmaster talks or networking types of speaking engagements, what do they need to do to get to that next level, to start getting in front of bigger audiences?
It's a good question. It's actually a great question because it's a different world today than it was when I started. So when I started, if you wanted to see me speak, I jumped on a plane or you did. Now I've got 500 videos on YouTube. I've got close to 500 episodes of my podcast. I've got more than 500 articles on my blog. Those are all ways to get my content. So that world is very different. And now, so to get better gigs, to get more gigs, you have to raise your profile. How do you do that? Well, obviously, we're all familiar with the idea of writing a book. That's never been easier than it is today with POD, print on demand. Amazon have made that all possible. So I would highly recommend that. But write for other outlets. And the other thing around that is write for outlets. And also, and this is very important, collaborate with others who you admire.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean specifically?
Well, for instance, if you come to me and say, how can you help me? I don't know. Is that my job? It's not my job to work out how to help you. Your job is to come to me and say, here's how I can help you. Give me a way that you can help me that allows you to tag yourself to me. That way, my following gets to know you. Add value to my audience. So, for instance, on my website, it doesn't say blog. It says, I read the icons. It's a blog. And underneath that, people can apply to be an icon on that site where you get to write. And we get 75,000 new visitors every month to that site, to that blog. So people want to write there. And so we have to actually choose who can write and who can't write. That's one of the ways. Get yourself out in front of audiences that will recognize you. Once they see you associated with. Years ago, one of my speaking mentors was John Childers. And John gave a very simple piece of advice. He goes, get yourself photographed with famous people holding your book. He goes, they may not have read it, but people will assume they have. And I've got hundreds of those pictures. And you know what's interesting? Is now I'm the guy holding other people's books.
Right.
So raise your profile, get yourself on podcasts. But listen, I will tell you, if you've not done minimum 20, 30 podcasts, you're not getting on my podcast. The top podcasters want to know that you know what you're doing. I actually offer training in it. Most people don't. I offer training in it for a nominal fee to be on my show. It doesn't mean you'll get on, but it means you'll be trained in how to deliver a great podcast. And if you're not sure and you don't even want to do a training, then go do some crappy podcast that's got 5, 10 listeners. That's okay. Get your practice in. Raise your profile in any way, shape, or form that you can. When you speak, and I want to just help you get bigger gigs. When you speak, video everything. Everything. If you're at Toastmasters, just don't let it look like Toastmasters. Shoot it at an angle that doesn't make it look like podcast, doesn't make it look like Toastmasters, because in there will be some 15-second, 20-second, 30-second, maybe even as much as a minute. That's pure gold. The rest of your talk might have been garbage, but grab those gold pieces and you'll start watching the audience respond, and you start threading those pieces together and use those, put them up on social media, get them out there. Hey, I just spoke in front of this audience and here's a nugget I delivered. I just wanted to share it with you so people can see that you can speak, that you do deliver impact. And the other thing around it is make your audience the heroes. One of the failings of speakers, it was my failing for many years, is to make yourself the hero, make the audience your hero, make a person in the audience your hero. You'll get much better gigs. And then when you get the gig, make the meeting planner the hero.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. What you were just saying before that I believe can be applied by anyone is really about leverage, right? So even if you may not have a list at all, you don't have a podcast yet, or you don't have a blog that generates a lot of traffic, find those that can get you in front of your ideal clients. They might be other blogs, they might be publications, they might be associations, groups, speaking events. These are all people or organizations that can put you in front of your ideal clients, even if you don't have a lot of resources right now to do that yourself. I think some of those
absolutely,
those examples that you shared of are very helpful for anyone who wants to get more leverage.
And I want to just give one little nugget in there that I think that most people forget. The reason people will fail at the very advice I just given is because they look needy. They look like gimme, gimme, gimme.
Tell me more about that. Let's get more specific for everyone. What do you mean?
Yeah. So I wrote a piece this week. It just came out this week. And it was why the most successful people won't tell you their secrets. And I talk about in there how the most generous people I know are the most successful people I know. So it's kind of a contradiction on the headline. And the reason is because this person said to me, I want to be a speaker. Can you give me some advice? This is the short version of it. And I said, yeah, take a shower. And so she was kind of uncomfortable at what I said. And she said, well, any other advice? And I said, yeah, wear deodorant. It gets hot on stage. And now she's kind of pissy. And she says, if you don't want to tell me, don't tell me. I said, listen, I really want to help you, but it's not my job to work out what it is you need. That's your job. Ask me for what you want and I will give it to you. I'm happy to do that, but don't waste my time trying to work out what it is that I'm supposed to deliver to you. Now, as a consultant, that's a different story. But when you're approaching somebody, you've got to know what it is you want and you've got to know what it is you're going to give. And here's the thing. If you want to get away from looking needy, show up with something to offer. Don't show up with your handout to take. Show up with your handout to offer. What can you offer? How can you add value to the person you're asking? Because, as I said, most successful people are enormously generous, but they don't like being taken for granted. Most of them who've climbed to the top have done so. Most of them are very good, decent people, and they've been shit on by some people and been taken advantage of. Don't be one of those. Show up with generosity. And by the way, when they help you, thank them. And I don't just mean, wow, thank you so much. I mean, write to them, send them a physical note or a card. And here's the last piece of that, and this is vitally important. Do not, I'm saying this with a punctuation, do not rip them off. I cannot tell you how many times I've assisted people who have literally taken what I said and transcribed it and called it their own.
Wow.
Do not rip off the people who are helping you. Don't do that, because I promise you, your name will get bad very fast. Very, very fast. If you're going to copy something, just give it credit.
Yeah.
I was on the call with Dov today and he really helped me. And here's one of the things he taught me. And I realized that that's an area that I can really help you with. And maybe you're not at the level where you could work with Dov, but maybe I can help you with this beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But you give credit.
Yeah. Reputation is all we have. It's all about reputation.
Exactly.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Dov, my sense is that like your activities are driven and very closely connected to your purpose. And of course, that's a lot of your work too, right? But I mean, you run your podcast, you speak, you write, you're on social media, it seems like nonstop. I think there's a lot of people who feel like they don't have a clear purpose in their lives right now. They're successful. I guess it sounds like a lot of the clients that you do work with, but they've achieved a lot. They may have come off a corporate career and now they're starting their business, or maybe they've been running their business for a period of time. But to get their consulting business to that next level, like they feel like something's missing. And so I'm wondering, without knowing someone's specific situation, what have you found in terms of principles that can help people to, whether it's get out of the bed in the morning and just feel more energy and excitement, or to feel like they're just driven more by their purpose that allows them to enjoy their work more and feel more productive and at higher levels of performance and happiness? What are maybe some principles or ideas that you've found that when people consider and then act on really makes a difference?
Thank you for asking that. I think the first thing we've all got to get to, a sort of starting block, is that success and fulfillment are two different things. And the trap of success is that we think it will be fulfilling. And the reason it's a trap is because it is fulfilling briefly. It is fulfilling, but only briefly. So if you're not finding yourself to be purpose-driven, if you don't know why you're doing it beyond paying the rent, buying a bigger car, buying a better house, whatever it might be, then you're going to run out of energy very quickly. So what has to happen is you have to find your purpose. And so I want to just help everybody here for a minute. Obviously, as you said, Michael, and very well put, that this is very subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's purpose is everybody's purpose. And I can't give you a generic answer to that. But I want to give you some really solid place to start. Most people go looking for their purpose in their passion. Your passion and your purpose are vastly different things. I have an online course called Purpose and Impact. You can find out about it on my main website, fullmontyleadership.com. But one of the things that shocked everybody the first time I ran that course was that your purpose and your passion are vastly different. Your passion is transitory. And so many people go off and go, oh, I'm really passionate about this. And then they find out, oh, I'm not so passionate about it. And they thought it was their purpose. And then they go, well, I don't have a purpose. Yes, you have a purpose, but your passion has changed. And so here's the way to think of it. Your passion is a vehicle. Your purpose is what gets transported in the vehicle. When the vehicle runs out of fuel, which it will, you will find a new vehicle. And so when people say, but I know that this is my passion, I've been passionate about it since I was 15, and I say, this is my analogy, and because I am who I am, and I recommend you be you, because you can only do you really well. And that is this. If you think about when you were 15, if you're a straight male, when you were 15, what were you passionate about at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old? I'm sure you can answer that question, Michael.
I have actually two things going through my mind. One was sports, because that was my life, and the other was thinking about women.
Of course, right? Of course, because you're a straight guy between 15 and 18 years old, that's probably what you're thinking about. And so my answer is, well, if your passion is supposed to be your purpose, why don't you work in gynecology? Because that would put you close to the thing you were passionate about as close as you could get. And I know that's not your career and it's not mine, and I don't want it to be mine. So passion is transitory. Purpose is not. Purpose is the one red thread that runs through all of your passions. I wrote a book on it. You can find it on Amazon. It's called One Red Thread. And it teaches you, and in there is some great exercise to help you find your purpose. So your purpose is always running through your life. But here's what I want you to get to. This is key for you to grasp. It's not only is it not your passion, but the place you're most likely to find your purpose is in your pain. And we as a society avoid looking into our pain. We are afraid of it. However, as Joseph Campbell said, if you want to find the treasure, you must enter into the dark cave of which you fear to enter. That treasure is your purpose. And the cave is the pain you don't want to look at. But when you look there, you will find your purpose. And when you find your purpose, everything in your business, your consulting business, your speaking business, your business period will transform. We've just done this work with a health technology company, and they had no purpose, and we were brought in, and they're all absolutely blown away at how aligned the executive team is in discovering this purpose of this organization totally fulfills what it is I, as an individual, I being one of the executives in the team, any of the executives in the team, need in my life. It meets my purpose because it addresses that pain I haven't looked at. So you want to find your purpose, look at your pain.
Yeah, I think this is such an important topic that in business, people don't spend enough time on. I think about my cousin and business partner, Sam, and I, we talk a lot about, because it really drives everything that we do as people and business people. And if we're not clear on why we're doing what we're doing, we tend to just kind of coast along and end up at a place that maybe we didn't actually want to go to. So I want to make sure that people know, Dov, where they can get a hold of some of these resources, learn more about your work, read your articles, just check out what you're doing, because I know that it will serve them well. So where's the best place for people to go to just learn more about your work and connect with you?
Thank you very much for asking, Michael. I sincerely appreciate that. You can find out more about me generally on fullmontyleadership.com. If you go to fullmontyleadership.com, there you'll find my blog. You'll feel access to my podcast, which is Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. The access is there. It's also on iTunes. You can find my blog there. You can find my products and my courses. And by the way, if you go to fullmontyleadership.com/gifts, because you're actually tuning into Michael's show, we have gifts for you. So you can go to that page and you can get access to some of those gifts. You can, of course, find me on YouTube, on LinkedIn by my name, on Twitter at the Dov Baron, on Instagram, Dov Baron Leadership. And I'm also on Roku TV. I'm on 3 channels there, including my own channel. I'm on Binge TV and SmartFem Media. So, and of course, like I said, easiest way, just Google Dov Baron. And after the first 1,000 pages, it might be somebody else.
There you go. And I can certainly attest to Dov's podcast, being a guest on it myself. Dov, you run a fantastic podcast, very well structured, a lot that we can all learn from. So please keep that up. And again, thank you for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, my friend. It was an honor. I'm pleased to have served you and serve the audience. And listen, I just want to say one thing before I go, and that is please let Michael know that you appreciate this show. Write to him. The guy puts in the time and the energy and the resources to find great guests for you, to add value to you. You know, as I said before, don't show up with your hand out. Show up with your hand out to give. So give back. Write to the guy. Let him know he's put the time, the energy, and the effort in to find you fabulous guests and add great resources to you. Tell him what you got out of this show. Tell him what you got out of any of the shows and how you're using it. In fact, you can write to me personally, dov@dovbaron.com. I want to hear from you. Tell me what you got out of this and what you're going to do with it. CC Michael, let's both have that conversation because we are here to serve you. But you've got to appreciate that we're doing that so that we know it's worthwhile. Let him know. The guy's doing a lot of great service to you.
Thanks, Dov. Really appreciate that. Everyone, take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.